Let me share my screen real quick. Can you all see my screen so far? Yes, we can. Okay, perfect. And oh no, then I can't see the chats. Let's see. All right, cool. Perfect. Yeah. So hello everyone, welcome to the talk here today. My name is ZK. I am the principal product designer for recommendation and AI chatbot team in Ingram Micro. I'm super excited to be here today to dive deeper into accessibility, mainly talk about how disabled users navigate the website and what us as a designer did wrong. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chats. I'll try to pay attention to the chat while going through everything. Just a little bit background about me. I graduated from the University of Washington and currently working as a principal product designer at Ingram Micro. At my time at UW, I work at the Access Technology Center where I test product like Mac, Outlook, and Zoom, providing recommendations to designers and engineers on how to make their product more accessible. I would love to share something that I learned during my time there. And yeah, and before I get started, I'm pretty sure we all have our fair share of accessibility talk in class or either for work. And I know it's kind of like, I probably hear a lot about color contrast, the big why behind the accessibilities. But today I don't really want to only scratch the surface and repeat the same points over and over again. I'm not gonna bore you with the usual stuff about why accessibility is important, like how Target paid $6 million to settle a site's accessibility suit, right? That's just boring. So for today, we will have some fun. I would love to call this like accessibility 102 because we're not only in the entry level anymore. I'm going to talk about how users with disability actually navigate websites and how we as a designer can help them significantly improve their experience. And let's explore the real impact of our design decision on their lives. All right, so here are how we're gonna break down for today's talk. First up, we'll cover some basic. What is accessibility? Just to make sure that we're on the same page. And then we'll get into who are the users. Just like all the UX design, understand our audience is the key to design for them. And then we'll take a closer look into keyboard-only users and screen reader users. And finally, I will wrap things up with some resources that you can use to keep accessibility top of mind in your design work. And we got a lot to cover. Let's get started. First of all, what is accessibility? So at its core, accessibility is all about making sure everyone, regardless of their ability, can use, enjoy, and benefit from the product that we create. Here how I like to define accessibility in a way that's easy to grasp. Everything a typical user can see and interact with, use a mouse, should also be accessible to people with disabilities. It's not a textbook definition, so don't quote me on that, but it's a handy way to keep things clear. If someone can use a mouse to click to interact with something on the website, others should be able to do the same with assistive tech. It's a simple guide to keep our design inclusive. And here's another principle to keep in mind. If something that is not visible or not interactive for a typical user, it shouldn't be for user with disability either. So here's a quick example. On this website, if I only use my mouse to click on a link, nothing happened. When I hover, nothing happened. If I use my keyboard to tap into the link, there's an empty tooltip spot pops up, which is weird. So for users who are keyboard only, or even with the screen readers, this could cause a lot of confusion and even misleading because they're receiving the information that other users are not receiving, only if because they're using a keyboard, so they see this things that doesn't make any sense at all. So the key takeaway here is that all the element, whether it's visible or interactive, should be intentional and meaningful. If something that's a typical user would see and interact with, they shouldn't be accessible. It's not something that typical user would see and interact with, then it should not be accessible for our users with disability either. This will help avoid confusions and keep our user experience consistent and clear. Now, I wanted to introduce a key concept before we move on. It's called interactive elements. I kind of bring this up a couple times when I was talking about it previously. Interactive elements are things like buttons, forms, links, and menus, anything that you can use your mouse to click or type in anything that user need to interact with. We call this interactive elements. For accessibilities, this means that every interactive element needs to be fully usable for user with disability. They should be navigated with a keyboard, mainly use tab, arrow keys, spacebar, and have clear focus states and be accessible through screen readers as well. So if user cannot interact with these elements using keyboard only or screen reader only, they're locked out of part of the experience. So it's our job to make sure that all the interactive elements are accessible to all type of users. When we're speaking of users, who are they? Who are we designing for? When we're talking about accessibility, there are two main type of user group that we need to focus on. We usually call them keyboard-only users and screen reader users. Keyboard-only users are individuals who navigate the website entirely with the keyboard only. They can be anyone with motor control restriction, Parkinson's, service arthritis, or users with disabled arms, or someone who experienced an accident, like people who likes to do it, like snowboarding, they might hurt their arms and be like, oh no, can't use a mouse anymore. And also, blind and visually impaired user will use keyboard a lot as well. And also, users prefer keyboards efficiencies. Like a lot of my software engineer friends would prefer to use keyboard only instead of mouse. Also, there's another type of user. We call it screen reader users. They use software that can read out the contents of a web page out loud. And they're usually people who are blind or low vision, people who are older, or users who with reading disabilities. These two groups represents a significant portion of user who depends on the accessible technology. And by focus on their needs, we're not only making our design more inclusive, but also enhance the usability for everyone. Let's dive deeper into first of our two main user groups, keyboard-only users. These are the users who rely solely, entirely on their keyboards to navigate the website, interact with the contents. All the functionality must be usable with the keyboard. That is, user can access the link, move between links, buttons, forms, and other controls, use tab key and other keystroke. So how exactly did they use that? Here are some example keys or like the main keys that they will use all the time. So for example, tab keys. This is the most crucial key for the keyboard navigation. User press tab keys to move forward through interactive elements like links, buttons, forms, and fields. So you'll see the focus on link, tap again, it will jump to the next link. Each press of the tab key will jump focus to the next interactive element, basically, on the page. And another one coming up is shift tap. Basically, this is going back. Let's say if you tap to the next link and you want to go back, just simply press Shift Tab. It will shift the focus backward to the previous interactive elements. Enter or spacebar. When the focus is on a link or a button, press Enter or spacebar will be able to activate it, just like clicking on it using a mouse. We also have arrow keys for users to navigate between options. Elements like drop-downs, menu, list, or slider will allow users to navigate between the menu items using up and down arrow keys. Last but not least, escape. The escape key is typically used for close a modal, pop-up, drop-downs, so that you don't need to move your mouse to click on the x-axis. You just press escape and that will be done. So these keys are the basic tools to navigate a website without a mouse. As the designer, our goal is to ensure that using these keys provides smooth, intuitive experience, just as it would a user with full mouse capability. I will highly encourage everyone to try navigating a website using only the keyboard to see if you can do this, because it's super challenging. Trust me, if you're doing this for the first time. And if you need more information, I have a link on the top that talk about how to navigate the webs using keyboards only. So let's talk about some common issues that we found when keyboard only users are using the website. First one is lack of focus indicator. I have a quick demo here. Let's see. It's on New Yorker. So what is a keyboard indicator? When you're tapping into a website, do you see the green outline here? Oh gosh. The green outlines here indicates where my focus is on. So if I tap and shift tab, you can see my focus indicator. But sometimes in some situation, there might not be a focus indicator. Like right now, do you know where my focus are? You can't tell, but I can, because once I press this, it will take me to the subscription page, meaning in the previous website, my focus is exactly here, but there's no focus indicator. And so I, as a keyboard only user, would not know where am I focused on at this moment. And so coming back, we as a designer need to make sure that we will have a good focus, visual focus indicators on every single interactive elements. They're essential for keyboard navigation. They show the user where they are on the page as they tap through the interactive elements. If these indicators are missing or not clear enough, just what I demoed, keyboard-only users can easily get lost and confused, unsure which element that they're actually interacting with. And imagine tapping through a website and have no clue where the focus is. It's trying to navigate in the dark. It's not just frustrating, but it can make the website completely unusable for someone who are relying on the keyboard. And so, what is a good visual focus indicator? First of all, it should be highly visible, should stand out from the background and surrounding element, should apply consistently across the whole website, so whenever it shows up, user know this is the focused item. It should be clear and distinct, should be distinguishable from other visual style. Here are some examples. A good focus indicator shouldn't just block some, I don't know if you can see my mouse, shouldn't just block the current existing text that people should read, and also a good one would just be highlighting which focus you are focused on. Right. Let's talk about the second issues that the keyboard-only users always have trouble with, which is non-focusable elements. Non-focusable elements are the interactive components on the web page that cannot be accessed or navigate using the keyboard. It's a major barrier for keyboard-only user because they can't focus on the element. They can't interact with it. They can't interact with it at all. So it's incredibly frustrating and can prevent user from access important features. So for example, let's say the keyboard-only user was able to see this help button here. If I'm a mouse-only user, I can click on it. But there's some situation where if this element is a non-focusable element, user cannot put a focus on this element at all. So in another word, they can't get help at all because it's a help button. So as a designer, we need to ensure that all the interactive elements, buttons, links, forms, everything on the website is focusable when we're doing the design QAs. Last but not least, for keyboard-only users, is that poor design tab or focus order. So tab and focus order refers to the sequence in which interactive elements are focused when the user navigates through the website using the tab key. So when the order is poorly designed, user can be experiencing a jarring and distraught navigation experience. They might jump from the top of the page to the bottom and miss key elements entirely. For example, imagine tapping through these forms here. If the focus jumps from my name and then jumps to other and then jump back to email, this sequence doesn't make any sense at all because we read from top to bottom, but the focus jumps everywhere. That will create a really, really bad experience for our users. And so a poorly designed tab order can make even simple tasks feels like obstacle course, especially for keyboard-only user who are relying on assistive technologies. So the focus order we generally follow is super easy, just like how we read stuff from top to bottom, from left to right. As you can see here as an example, at the top, we have a navigation bar. So we jump the order from this link to the navigation bar, and then we jump out to the second row and follow through the order one by one. Very straightforward, very easy. And another important aspect that I wanted to bring up is the skip to main content button. You might have noticed that when I was navigating through the New Yorker website. This button is very important because when users navigating through a website using a keyboard only, they often need to tap through repetitive element like the navigation menu, just like how we're showing at the top in the previous slide. User, in order to get to this main section, they will need to tap 14 times in order to get to this area, which is the most important area. And so with skip to main content, they only need to press once. They tap here, they press confirm, will jump to the main section directly. It will save them tons of time and efforts when they're navigating through the website. So incorporating a skip to main link is a small but crucial detail that will make a big difference in creating a more efficient and user-friendly experience for our keyboard-only users. Now, let's do a fun activity together. Which should the next focus landed on? Let's say you are on this web page and you're landed on the home tab right now. What would be the next tab? Once you press tab, what will be the next focus landed on? We have A on the profile button, B on the search bar, and C on Cloud for Myself. Which one do you feel like this will land at? Take a moment to think about it and right. I see a lot of comments on A and C. All right, so let me review the quick answer. The correct answer is C. The bottom labels Cloud for Myself as the bottom that will be landed on. This is pretty confusing, right? Because I would just talk about, hey, it should be left to right, top to bottom. Like, why is it not profile, but the bottom in here? The reasons for that is because, oh, oops. Here's why. The Cloud for Myself button is located within the tab panels. When the focus landed on this web page, it will first of all land on this tab list. And then user would need to use arrow left and arrow right to navigate between these tab items. And if they tap again, it will get into the tab contents, which is this big section here, where it would take them to the first focusable item, Cloud for Myself, right here. And that was the reason why when you're focused on a tab structure components, we land on the tab list first, and tap again, we land to the tab panel as the patterns specifically for this tab components that applies across the universe. And let's say, for example, in this tab, people are talking about what if I need to use the search feature all the time? How am I going to get to the search feature? Because in order to get the search feature, I need to jump here and then tap Cloud for Myself, tell everybody, and then I need to go to the search. It's 4 tab. That's a lot of work. So if the search feature is that important, but it's in a very behind order in the tab order, what we can do is to utilize shortcuts for interaction that they need to frequently perform and have a high visual priority. So for example, here, if we have the command / button, user can just jump to the search immediately. Yeah, so beyond just following the top to bottom, left to right focus order, we also need to pay attention to keyboard interaction patterns for different components and consider hierarchy of the actions as well. That's what we need to consider as a designer. I know it looks pretty confusing, but a good thing is that we do have a patterns. W3, oh God. This is a w3.org website that they provide all the patterns for us on how these components works and what is the expected accessible behavior for them. So if you have any questions on, oh, how do I know if there's a hidden pattern just like tabs? Just get in here, they will provide example for you to navigate. Are there any standard shortcut actions such as searching? It depends on your websites, because different websites have different, I would say, priority when it comes to actions. And for example, you can go to Zoom. Zoom has their own shortcut list. They have different ones, depends on the usage, and you can change that as well. A lot of people customize it, but at the end of the day, you're the designer. Since you're designing your program, you will know what action is triggering the first, like all the time, and what's the action's priority? How long does it take for a keyboard-only user to get access to that action points? If there is the case, then you need to create shortcuts for them. And just make sure that your shortcuts don't duplicate with other shortcuts on your website. Otherwise, it's kind of like, what does this one trigger? It's not sure. Oh, I'll attach the link um, to our chats at the very end. All right, next one. So, in conclusion, what can we do to improve keyboard accessibilities in our design? First of all, it's essential to ensure every single interactive element has a clear and consistent focus states. And so user will know where they are when they're navigating the app. Without this, they would just get lost. Next, including the skip to main contents like buttons at the beginning of the page. This simple addition would let user bypass repetitive navigation element and jump straight to the main content. This small change can make a big difference, creating efficiency and user-friendly experience. It's the default practice. The next important step is that we can take is to label the keyboard interaction and tab order during the design engineer handoff. I know a lot of engineers need to learn about accessibility too, but sometimes they're too busy or they just couldn't have time to pay more attention to focus order. And as a designer, we can remind them this is how the focus should do, and this is how what they expect in the accessibility side to do. Well, by doing this, we need to ensure the final product matches with our design intentions, is accessible to our keyboard-only users. Last but not least, we need to verify keyboard-only interactions for the interface using correct patterns during the design QA. If we find out there's something is really wrong during our design QA, file bugs let our engineer to fix it because they're actually breaking the law and also preventing our keyboard-only or screen reader-only users to continue interacting with our website. And in conclusion, designing for keyboard-only users is essential for creating an inclusive experience. Key elements like logical tab order, visible focus indicator, and clear focus management makes all the differences. Right. Screen reader users. Now let's talk about screen readers. Screen readers are assistive technology that can convert text and elements on the screen into speech, allowing users who are blind or have low visions to navigate and interact with digital contents. Here are the common screen readers that people use nowadays. Windows and Windows system, we have NVDA and JAWS, and then MacBook, we have VoiceOver. I'll talk about them separately because the interaction of these things are slightly different. So let's talk about Windows system, NVDA and JAWS. These are two of the most commonly used screen readers on Windows platform. And their interaction is relatively easy. So using a screen reader is actually very similar to navigating a website using just a keyboard. That's why it's super important to make the keyboard accessible, to make it really keyboard friendly, because screen reader users are relying on the keyboard as well. User can tap through all the interactive elements, use arrow keys to navigate within menus, press enter to activate the button, so on and so forth. And it's just exactly like what we went over in our previous slide, talking about how to navigate using keyboard only. However, of course, there are something that's more, which is control key, stop reading. When you're trying out a screen reader in your own computer, if there's one key that I would recommend to remember, is the control key. Otherwise, your screen reader are gonna talk like non-stop. There's no way to stop it from talking, but press the control key. It will stop immediately. Trust me, it will save you from going crazy with the screen reader talking non-stop. And user can also move to the previous or like next line, or even navigate by character of the word. just using left arrow, top arrows, and control arrows. You guys can try it out using the hints that we provide here. Now let's talk about screen readers. Apple's built-in screen reader VoiceOver. It's all available on all the macOS and iOS devices. However, is this more complicated than JAWS and NVDA? Because in JAWS and NVDA, we can use the tabs to navigate. However, in VoiceOver, we can still use Shift tab to navigate on the interactive elements. But when it comes to reading the contents, we will have a lot more things to keep in mind of, which is a lot. And making sure that you're using Safari when you turn on VoiceOver, because I've tried it multiple times in Chrome and Edge. It just doesn't work as good as Safari since this is the built-in browser from Apple. So here are some keystroke that we need to use. Command press F5 to turn on and off the VoiceOver. Or you can press the Touch ID 3 times. The accessibility setting will just pop up and you can select VoiceOver from there. And then Command Option key. This is very important because this is a key that we know by, usually call it the VO key, which stands for the VoiceOver key. The VoiceOver key is actually a combination of the Command and Options key they use to conjunction with other keys to perform various navigation tasks within VoiceOver. For example, pressing VoiceOver key, Command Option, with the right arrow will move the focus to the next item on the screen, while press VoiceOver spacebar will activate the selected item. So these are the shortcuts that are essential to navigate through the website using VoiceOver. You guys can try that out by using VoiceOver. There is a tutorial by Apple. So here, I will go over an example on how to use this. So how it works in action is that once you go into a website, VoiceOver will land it on the first interactive element or like first readable element on top, which is skip to the main content, which is makes sense. And then it will give user immediately points of navigation saying link, skip to the main contents. And as a user, I can press Command, Option, and right arrows. It will navigate through the page to move to the next element that's readable. So the VoiceOver, and then will read it out loud, the content, and describe the element, helping user to understand what's on the page and what to do next. For example, if I press Command, Option, right arrow up from the skip to the main content, it will focus on this next element, which is this one, saying link, University of Washington. The visited here meaning if you visit the link or not. So how does screen reader actually read the content on a website? It's all actually coming down to HTML5 structure. So for example, consider a single bottom element, just like this one, clap for myself. In HTML, this is the code, bottom, and then content, and then bottom again. In this, when the screen reader encounters this, it reads out the combination of the component type, the content, and optionally the instruction on how to interact with this. So this will be components, which is the bottom. Also talk about the content, clap for myself, and option instruction on how to use it, which is press Command Option spacebar to activate. That's how screen reader knows how to interact with an HTML5 elements. Another thing that I want to bring our attention is that bottoms and links are two very different interactive elements in screen reader's mind. A bottom usually triggers some action, such as showing the contents on the same page, having some slide out or pop up on the same page. However, there's links. Links take user to a new location or new page, such as a new web page or a new section of the current page. There are links as well. It's pretty important to tell the difference to make sure to use the right element when we're designing, because when screen reader users, they're blind, when they hear bottom, they know something's gonna happen on the website when they click this one. However, if they hear something like link, they will expect this to take them to another location, a website, after all. So if you're visually designing a bottom that looks like a link, make sure to let the engineer know that it's a button, it's not a link. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for our visual users, but matters more to our screen reader users. Now let's talk about some common issues that can impact the efficiencies of the screen readers. Their lack of landmark and heading, missing alt text for image, and dynamic content updates. So what exactly is landmark? A landmark is a key structural element in a web page that helps user navigate more efficiently. Think of landmark as kind of like signposts that indicate different section of the page, such as like the header, the navigation, the main section. There's like complementary sections so that they kind of know how the page structure is kind of like. So why is it important for our screen reader users? Because landmark will allow user jump directly to the important area of the page without tap through every single element. So let me play this. So as a screen reader users, they can filter out the landmark by pulling out a landmark list. So that let's say if I click on the main, it would jump to the main area directly. If I click on the landmark complementary, it will jump to this section directly. So it's very important that we have landmark label on the website where in the screen readers world, they know how the structure is like and then quickly find out which part that they need to jump to immediately. Without landmarks, it becomes very difficult for user to understand the structure of the website. They'll have to navigate through every single element, like every single link, in order to find out the main content, where is the navigation menu, which is not only time-consuming, but very frustrating. Here is an example of poor landmark. Let's say if I'm a screen reader user, I can't see this website at all. But when I pull out all the landmarks, it just called main and then carousel, 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 carousel. It's basically the same thing. I don't know what the page layout is like. I don't know which area should I visit because they're all the same. And so this can cause a lot of confusions for our users. In order to fix this problem, we as the designer need to correctly label those sections with our ARIA landmarks. We can provide clear guidance on screen reader user, making it easier for them to navigate and understand the whole layout of the page by labeling each section during our design handoffs. And so we finished landmark. Now there's another concept as heading. What is heading? Heading are crucial for helping users, especially using screen reader, to scan the page quickly and understand the main contents. I don't know about y'all, but I don't read the whole article online on the website. I usually just skim them. Same as screen reader users, even though they can't see it, but they still want to skim through the page. How are they gonna do it? Headings. They're only reading the heading to get to know, oh, what this page is about and which part is important to me, and they will be able to jump to the specific section. So, and headings are labeled as like H1, H2, H3, H4 by hierarchy. So here's an example of how user can pull out and heading, just like how they pull out for landmark. So screen reader will allow users to navigate by heading, often using number keys to jump between them. Let's say if I press, here are the list of headings. If I press 2 here, it will filter out all the number 2 headings, so user can jump there immediately. If I press 1, it will jump to all the level 1 headings. So it's very easy for screen reader to skim and jump through different headings. Headings are also need to follow a logical and sequential order to make it make sense, especially for screen reader users, because they can't see. Headings are usually always followed by sequential and descending order without skipping levels. The numbers in H1 all the way to H6 text represents the heading level, where H1 is the highest level, typically the main titles, and H6 is the lowest subsections. So for example, if you have a heading 1, then it should follow by heading 2, and then it should follow by heading 3. Skipping a level, jumping from heading 1 directly to heading 3 without a heading 2 can confuse the user, because they have an assumption that heading 1 must follow by heading 2. They will be like, where's heading 2? Did I miss anything? And then at here, if we jump directly from heading 2 to heading 4, they will just be like, where's my heading 3? So maintaining these order ensure that the content structure is clear so user can easily understand the hierarchy of information on this page. However, text style is not equals to headings. I know we use the term headings a lot in the design world. We're usually talking about heading 1 is like the biggest heading, and then heading 2 might be a smaller, slightly smaller one. But it should really reflect the structure of the page instead of the style. Just because the text is bold, larger, a different color, it doesn't make it a heading. A heading should be defined by H1 to H6 tag in HTML, and they need to accurately reflect the structure of the page. The purpose of heading is to create a clear hierarchy and guides users, especially for those with screen readers. Through the contents, simply text without proper heading tag won't provide the same level of accessibility or structure. In other words, headings aren't just about how they look, it's about how they function and how they help user navigating the webs. In this example here, heading 2 is a part 2 title. Even though it's smaller than heading 3, it's still a H2. So how can we make sure our design is accessible and well-structured? One key way to do is to label the headings clearly during the design handoff and ensure that they are in the correct order, reflect the structure of the page. A lot of the time, our engineer can be lazy and just using headings H1, H2 tags in HTML just for a style, which is not correct, as we mentioned earlier. So if we label those out during the handoff to our engineer, they will be more mindful when it comes to building out those web pages to make them more accessible and using the correct heading tag. Another common issues that in web accessibility is missing alt text for images. I know this is a very a topic that people talked about all the times. An alt text is a brief text description of an image. Is read by screen readers to provide information about the image's purpose to the readers. When some alt text is missing, screen reader user usually left guessing like what is the image might be. They might miss out some important information entirely. This can lead to confusion and even make the content inaccessible to them. So let's go over some best practice for writing an efficient alt text. First of all, keep it short, usually 1 to 2 sentences. Don't overthink it. I mean, screen reader user, they don't want to hear paragraph and paragraphs of what the alt text is. And also consider key elements and why you choose the image for a document instead of describing every single detail. You don't need to say an image of or the picture of whatever because HTML5 would just say it for you if they detect it's an image elements. But if it's a logo, do say it. If it's an illustration, painting, cartoon, do mention that because usually we're just saying the image doesn't mean it is a painting. Don't duplicate text that adjacent in the documents or the website, and end the alt text sentence with the periods. Here's an example of what the alt text would be like. A poor alt text would be an image of a bunch of people. Also, poor text is a group of photo with 4 people, starting from the left, a girl in the white shirts is Jennifer, who is sitting on a chair, and the woman on the right. This is too much detail. We don't need that much of detail. And so a useful one can just be 4 coworkers smiling and chatting in a modern office setting, and that's good enough. I like to share a memorable quote from my ex-boss in UW Accessibility Center. He said, "I'm just blind, I'm not stupid." This was his comment after I put overly detailed instruction on every single component of a project. This quote is powerful to remind that while accessibility is about providing necessary information, it's also about respecting the intelligence and autonomy of our users. We need to strike a balance, giving users the information they need without overwhelming them with unnecessary detail. In accessibility, clarity and simplicity often go a long way. That means not all the images needs alt text. I know it's a good practice, but not all of them needs it. When it comes to accessibility, images generally fall into three categories: informative, functional, and decorative. Informatives, images convey some simple concept or information that express a short phrase or sentence. We will need an alt text for the scenario because there are some scenario where we provide instruction for user on how to do things. And two, functional. Functional images are used to indicate some action rather than convey information. A lot of the icon buttons are fall into this category. For example, this add to favorite button. Three, decorative image. Decorative image these are purely for aesthetic purpose. It's just for looking good. And it doesn't provide any meaningful contents to the page. In this case, we don't need alt text and just put a no alt text attributes will be great. I saw a question, how do we determine which image needs alt text because some image and just there for decoration? Very good question. Actually, W3CG has a decision tree for us. If you're unsure whether image needs alt text, don't worry. So the god of accessibility have you covered. They do provide this decision tree for us. You can answer those questions and they will guide you through the entire process. If do you think this image needs an alt text or not? I'll share the link in the chats later by the end of the presentation. All right. Last but not least, dynamic contents updates. So what is dynamic contents update? Imagine you are on a shopping website. Oh, I didn't update this. It's okay. Imagine you're in a shopping website. If you click add to cart and we have something slides out called added to cart already, that pops up. That is a dynamic change. Something changed on the web page. And for user with disabilities, especially the one that rely on screen reader users, they don't know some pop-up just pop out randomly. We need to remind them. How are we going to do this? Live regions. To make dynamic contents accessible, it's important to use live regions. Live region implements with ARIA attribute like ARIA Live allow screen reader to detect and announce changes in the context automatically. So basically, if you put live regions there, they will detect change automatically and report to the user so that users are aware of the updates as they happen, keeping them informed and be able to interact with the content as intended. So in this example, we'll put Area Live on this little components here. And upon user adding some things to the carts, the screen reader would detect the alarm and announce the item was successfully added to cart immediately, since this one will pop up. What if there's a situation where we have three notifications? At this time, we'll be able to use different level of importance for these live regions. Live regions provide three levels of importance: assertive, off, and polite. Assertive means that this is a very important information that you need to know immediately. Then we put, for example, an arrow message, then we'll put assertives on it. Second one is off, indicates that the updates should not be presented to a user unless users currently focus on that region. For example, this blue one here saying, nothing is important, just want to say hello. Not important at all, just don't bother our screen reader users of that. So just keep it off. Last but not least is the polite one, which is the most commonly used one, indicate that the update to the region should be presented at the next graceful opportunity. So when the screen reader knows that, oh, it's a good time to say something, and they will announce this change. And added to cart is that type of notification, because sometimes it's like, I click it, I know it's added to carts. And how can we help? So we as a designer, what can we help? First of all, we want to label the politeness for each alarm message. When an alarm appeared, manage the focus so that it moved directly to the alarm. Let's say if I press a button here and the alarm pops up, once I tap my tab key, the focus should go directly to the alarms that was dragging my attention at this time. After the alarm is acknowledged and dismissed, let's say if I put my focus here and then press enter, my focus should go back to where I was previously as expected. And in conclusion, that's what we need to do for screen reader user. We need to label proper landmarks and headings, label alt text for images and icons properly, strategically label the alarm and its politeness. Yeah, so that's all I have for today's presentations. To wrap things up, here are some valuable resources to help you dive deeper into accessibility and ensure your design is accessible and inclusive. I also created a checklist for designers to check your design before the handoffs. And there are some testing tools that we commonly use when it comes to testing for accessibilities. And here are some mobile tools. I know we're mainly talking about apps today. And yeah, I'd like to leave you with these thoughts. Every design decision has the potentials to include or exclude people. As we have seen today, the choice we make in our design can either open the doors or create barriers for our users. It's up to us to ensure that our work is inclusive and accessible as possible. Thank you all for all your attentions and participations today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, looking forward to answer all the questions. Um, I do see there's a comment earlier that I didn't get the chance to answer. What about when a pop-up window appears? What is the keyboard rules there? Just tab key automatically move to the pop-up window? Yes. So it depends on what type of pop-up window that you're talking about. Usually the focus will be trapped within the model. So the focus wouldn't go to the background. It would just trap within that little model and it'll create a little focus loop there until user close the model using the escape key or press the close button. And so yes, it will move automatically to the pop-up window. Is the deck? Yes, I can share the deck. How do I think accessibility can be improved from current state between how developer and designer interacts? I To be honest, I was an engineer before I become a designer, so I can see how things going both way. On the first hand, when I was an engineer, I do hope my designer can point out some like headings and landmark when they're designing. And when I am a designer, I hope that our engineer can make things keep like build with accessibility in mind, so that labeling with the correct headings, labeling with correct landmark, because that's something that's out of my control. I think something that's pretty helpful at the very least, from my experience, is having the accessibility check at the pipeline in the engineer side. So every time engineer trying to push some change, it will automatically trigger the test, just like testing all the code. It will check accessibility as well. I think that is the most helpful ways to keep us in the loop that we should make things accessible. But sometimes these type of tool have their limitations as well. As what I mentioned, if the search is very important, we need to create shortcuts to get there. Engineers are having a hard time to capture little user experience, things like that, and it really needs designers' helps to pay attention to that. Um, are the things flipped for Asian countries that read left to right to left? Yes. Everything will focus on the reading order. Reading order and the tab order should be the same. And what about seniors? With some baby boomer, I learned more about accessibility to keep senior in mind. Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. Seniors are definitely having their problems as well. A lot of them, their eyes aren't as good as us. When they see things, it's tended to be more blurry and in the yellow side. And so color contrast should be a really good one, big one. And also making the interactive element bigger. I think in iOS, we also have guidelines making sure that's 44 pixel minimum for the heights and the width. for a button for senior users to press it. There's a lot of research coming to that one as well. Yeah, but still, a lot of them have Parkinson. They was slowly relying on keyboard only, or there's some accessible tools that they can use, but it's also relying on the rules that I mentioned earlier. That you need to make sure the tapping, because a lot of them just mimicking the tapping and keyboard gesture. I noticed that certain websites are overly designed with animations, can be a lot to take. What's your thoughts on these websites making them accessible? Yeah, I do agree that some websites are overly animated, and I feel like their target user aren't. It's just pretty bad. Because I personally have like motion sickness. I got pretty bad motion sickness if I'm seeing those type of website. I think a good practice if they still wanted to showcase the fanciness animation is that to create two versions. One is a simpler version, and another one, you can do whatever you want. I think it's sometimes just really hard um, for us with motion sickness to read through those websites. And if the website's goal is to deliver some information, they should provide a simpler version, especially for screen reader users. They can't even see those fancy animation. Just keep things simple and make sure that they don't I don't think they need to include, if the visual is for decoration only, they don't need to include any description that telling us what exactly is going on there if their goal is just to deliver informations. How did I transit to UX from engineer? I work in a startup, and back then my manager asked me what's my career goal, and I told them that I wanted to be a designer, and then he put me into a design team. Long story short, that's how it is. Have been a big change or trend in design the past few years. Do need address accessibility wise? I would say AI. A lot of the AI products that is been popping up nowadays, and people are able to create websites super quickly, I would say, using AI tools. And I don't know how accessible these products would be with the, and I don't know what are the resources the AI is studying from. I'm kind of worried that like for the website that's created by AI or vibe coding, what if they're not accessible? What if they don't pay attention to accessibility? And then that means a bunch of trash websites just coming out, not being accessible at all, to most of the users. Can we apply the same recommendations? Are these more things to consider in those platforms for mobile apps? Yes, my specialty is not on mobile apps because I having a trouble to learn how to use screen readers on mobile app. They are pretty hard. There are some gesture that you need to learn. Like, for example, if you tap once, it doesn't mean that it's a confirm. It only means that it's listening to it. You need to double tap or triple tap in order to trigger something. It's completely different things because it includes gesture. So some of the recommendations are applicable to mobile apps, for example, including alt tags and things like that, but there are more going on in the mobile world. Are you by chance on ADP list as a mentor? I am not currently on ADP list, but if you have anything I'm open to talk about, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Do you feel accessibility should be part of the onboarding? Every new user so they do not need to go to a menu configure. I do think accessibility should be part of the onboarding for every new users, at least on my end. I do feel like it's a pretty important things to do. For example, not talking about people who are completely like rely on keyboard. For example, my mom on using her iPhone, she can't even see it because her eyes aren't that good anymore. She have to find it out on on her phone to make the fonts larger, which is really hard to do when you can't really see it, and it need to depends on other people to set it up for her. So if it's during the onboarding, we can set it up like the color contrast, the font size, those basic things that can help users to be able to at least see stuff and interact with stuff on the platform will be great. And I highly recommend there's a setting section for accessibility for all the websites or at least web applications, just like Zoom, so that user know where they can set the settings. Are there any websites you suggest where I can get more information about accessibility and senior? I don't have a good website in mind right now. Maybe other people would have better ideas because usually I'll just go to WCAG for all the accessibility related stuff. They've changed very frequently. They update it very frequently. A lot of the thing is applicable for senior as well, but there are some research papers going on that I need to look into. Examples of website that do accessibility pretty well. Yes, WCAG has their own example website. I'll share all the links that I have in my presentation. And let me see. And I have to say, like, not because I work there, UW actually have a really, really good website. Um, uh, because they have to keep everything really accessible, otherwise student can sue them for not being accessible. So UW's accessibility is actually pretty good. Um, I have the slide deck here. Let me see. How do you recommend communicate accessibility guideline about products, instructions, shortcuts, company accessibility has just added new features to its products? Usually how I do it is I put it on the accessibility, I put it on the design handoff, and I also created a checklist for accessibilities, for designer checklist for our designers, putting in our conference page inside our company. Um, that's how we do it right now, but it's pretty hard without engineer support. So currently we're also working with engineer trying to put accessibility check into the pipeline so that whenever they push the code, we can check it for them. Uh, I know Europe. Yes. How does that impact outside the EU with applying the standard? I'm not too sure about the EU, sorry. Because I'm mainly working in the United States, and I know WCAG is our mainly guidelines right now. As your journey as designer does have strong coding principle, push your value as one. I talked about this with my friend previously. Knowing how to code doesn't make me a strong candidate during interviews. I think being a designer, knowing how to design is your strongest weapons, but getting to know how to code definitely help when it comes to accessibility and communicating with the engineers. It depends on some role, some designer, some roles. I do have some roles that they would prefer designer who can code so that they can build out prototypes. But I would say now that I don't know, I saw Figma sites this morning. I don't know. I don't know if you really need to know how to code in order to publish a website right now. So I'm not sure. Right. Thank you, everyone. If there's no further questions, I guess. Oh, would you like to suggest a new designer to push? Oh, new designer to push their value. Can you clarify a little bit more on what do you mean by push their value? Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for your talk. I found a lot of insights today
Thank you,
on it.
Joshua.
And in fact, I'm guilty of making some mistakes. And I realized that while watching today's talk, when I was like, these are things that I've potentially also overlooked when designing, you know, and it made me think. And that was one of the things I was like, when a new user comes into our company or starts using our software, they don't really know, where the accessibility settings are and, what they can change and what they cannot change. And, it also made me realize that I've never done the testing with the tabs where, we don't know the order of what's happening when you click on tabs. We know it for certain pages, but we've never done an audit. And it made me realize that, we need to do audits to check, whether our product is being used correctly and is accessible to all kinds of users. So it was really insightful. And I think, a lot of students today learned here, quite a bit today. It was a great crash course and, it covered quite a few topics, which we don't usually happen to hear in, introductory UX courses. So it was great to, hear from you today.
Thank
And
you.
again, to everybody who came here today, if you all enjoyed your experience here, definitely go ahead and talk about your experience and what you learned from Zhiqi on LinkedIn. Go ahead and tag her. You can also tag Design Buddies as well as Dubstack, and put a post on LinkedIn or on Instagram or both, if you like to be really social. And what I'd also recommend all of you all to do is to definitely go ahead and take a look at all of our talks that we have coming up. So today we have just a team building event coming up right after, but we also have, multiple talks in the coming days. So we have a designer X AI talk, which is going to basically talk about how you can improve your portfolio as well as your resume using AI. And then we also have another talk on designing for all minds, where it's another accessibility talk on how do you go ahead and embrace neurodiversity in product experiences, which is with Pratik Joglekar. And after that, we have, designing trustworthy AI with Pawan Sevak. He's been working on a lot of AI features at Adobe, and their key struggle is always, how do we go ahead and get a user to trust our AI solution and actually want to use it? And that's the challenge which, they got over, and he's coming to share his insights about that. And we also have another talk, which is on working in a UX company, a small startup company, that's with Sumin, where she's going to be talking about her experience of being a designer at a startup. And she's also going to be going ahead and walking you through a Figma file and what it means to be the solo designer. So, sometimes, a lot of young designers are not sure, can I do it at a young startup? Do I need a mentor? She's there to talk to you all about it. So what the experience could be like. And then on the main Protothon day, if you've not registered for the Protothon, please register for it. It's on Saturday and Sunday. It's an online UX hackathon. I would highly recommend everybody to come in. It's our 12th one. We've been doing it for quite a while. And I think, if I'm not wrong, we are definitely the largest online UX hackathon that happens every year. So definitely do join. We have 4 tracks. There's a lot of opportunity to learn and make a brand new portfolio piece, as well as get feedback from professional, designers who are in the industry. You're not just getting feedback from, or just another student. You're getting feedback from people who are actually in the workforce, and learning how you can improve your project is very important. So I would highly recommend coming in. And also, we have a few talks on that day. The first talk we have is with Katie Wang, where she's going ahead and telling you, about what they don't tell you about breaking into product design. So if you're interested in the job search, do attend her talk. And then we have 2 talks to follow her talk up with, which also discuss the design job search. So we have Raymond is going to be telling you about, your first step in terms of the design job search. He'll be talking about all the different stages of the design job search in detail, and he'll be focusing on, how you can improve your portfolio primarily. And then we also have, Pragya, who's also talking about how you can improve your portfolio from a visual angle. So she'll be discussing design principles you can be applying. And then we have 2 talks to conclude the day at the moment. The first is the synergy between AI and UX, with a lot of examples. So Sahin Gumas is the creative director at Moving Brands, and he has an opportunity to work with a lot of companies, across different industries. And he is coming in to go ahead and share the insights of how, AI is going ahead and being integrated into the user experience of different products. So he's coming in with different examples, really insightful. So I'd highly recommend you to attend. And we now have a latest stock that's been added into our lineup, which was just added in, today morning, which is to design like a detective. And that's with Shiva Shah. He's from Cisco. He's going to be going ahead and sharing, again, a lot of insights about how you basically discover the right problem to solve. So I'd highly recommend registering for our talks if you haven't already. Go ahead and use the link that we are dropping in the chat. I think Madhu's already dropped a link. I'm just going to go ahead and put another one in the chat. So just go ahead and register for the talks. And thank you so much for coming in, everybody.